The two-time Oscar winner announced on Instagram today she has been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. She is undergoing chemotherapy. She says it is a very treatable cancer. She says she'll be getting treatments for the next 6 months and that 80% of patients survive it. Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma begins in the white blood cells and affects parts of the body's immune system.
Have you ever wondered what it's really like to be a famous star? Jane Fonda's name makes people think of beauty, courage, and great movies. She was one of Hollywood's brightest stars, someone who could grab your attention just by looking at the screen. But behind all the glamour and fame, Jane was once a young girl hiding deep pain that no one could see. Her story is not just about being famous or successful, it's about a quiet, long battle with sadness, loneliness, and trying to find love and acceptance. This is the story of how a young girl became a star, but kept struggling to be truly understood and accepted for who she really was. Childhood shadows and early loss. Jane Fonda didn't start life in the bright lights of Hollywood, even though her father, Henry Fonda, was one of the biggest movie stars of his time.
He is the definition of dedication and professionalism. Something we can all be proud of, an example to us all. Henry Fonda loves to act and is the true portrait of the working actor.
To the world, Henry was a legend, calm, strong, and admired by millions. But to Jane, he was a distant figure, hard to understand and harder to reach. He wasn't the kind of father who showed love openly. Instead of hugs or words of encouragement, Jane felt the coldness of silence and the pressure to be perfect. She was afraid that if she wasn't thin enough or composed enough, her father's attention would disappear. Then tragedy struck when Jane was only 12 years old. Her mother was admitted to a psychiatric hospital. At home, Jane was told only vague stories. Her mother had suffered heart failure. There was no room for sadness or questions. The family didn't talk about it. Her mother's pictures vanished from the house, her name barely whispered. Weeks later, the truth hit Jane like a thunderbolt. She found out from a magazine that her mother had taken her own life. That moment shattered everything. Jane was left alone to carry a heavy burden of guilt. She thought if she had just said goodnight, if she had done something different, her mother might still be alive. Her father said nothing. He moved on without comfort or explanation. Jane learned to keep her pain locked away, to act like everything was fine even when inside she was breaking apart. As Jane grew older, the pain didn't disappear. Instead, it turned into a need to prove herself. In Hollywood, where looks and success mean everything, she made herself into a perfect picture. She was beautiful, talented, and soon her face was everywhere, on magazine covers, movie posters, and TV screens. But inside, Jane was fighting a secret war. She struggled with bulimia, hiding the self-destructive habits behind smiles and glamour. She hated her body and thought if she could change how she looked, maybe she could fix how broken she felt inside. Hollywood only made things worse. People in the industry gave her cruel advice, telling her to change her appearance to fit their idea of beauty. One studio executive even suggested she should break her jaw to make her face look slimmer. Jane listened because she wanted to be loved and accepted. She went through plastic surgery, not out of vanity, but desperation. Every change was a silent scream for approval, but the mirror never gave her peace. No matter how perfect she looked, the pain stayed hidden beneath. Breaking through. From starlet to serious actress. Jane's 20s were filled with bright lights and harsh shadows. The world saw a confident star, but she felt hollow inside. She didn't expect to live past 30, yet even in that dark place she kept going, driven by something deeper than fame, a need to be real, to be heard. Her true breakthrough came in 1969 with the movie They Shoot Horses, Don't They? Jane played a dancer worn down by hardship and despair. It wasn't just a role, it was her truth coming to the surface. Her performance was raw, filled with pain that was real and visible to anyone who looked closely. Then came Clute in 1971, where she played a woman caught between danger and desire. Instead of just being a pretty face, Jane brought depth and honesty to the character, making her more than a stereotype. This performance earned Jane her first Oscar.
Hal Wallace Universal Pictures Limited Production. May I have the envelope, please? The winner is Jane Fonda.
A symbol of her rebirth, not just a reward for beauty. In 1978, Coming Home brought her second Oscar. The movie told the story of a woman caring for a wounded Vietnam veteran. Jane's tears were genuine. Her empathy was real. This role marked a new chapter. Jane stopped choosing roles just because they were offered. She chose parts that mattered, stories that spoke to truth and healing, not just entertainment. Jane's life wasn't just about movies. She wanted to make a difference. In the early 1970s, she began to question the world around her. She traveled to places affected by war to listen, learn, and understand suffering beyond the headlines. She wanted to feel connected to something real. But one moment changed everything. In 1972, a photo of Jane sitting near North Vietnamese military equipment was taken during her trip abroad. The picture quickly spread, sparking outrage in the United States. She was called Hanoi Jane, and public opinion turned harsh and unforgiving. Jane didn't expect the backlash. She hadn't gone there to support a side, but to witness the human cost of war. Yet the photo became a symbol of betrayal for many. Movie offers slowed down, and her reputation suffered. Even so, Jane didn't retreat. She faced the criticism head-on and expressed regret only for how the photo was seen, not for her intentions. Instead of disappearing, she poured her pain and strength into her art and activism. With Coming Home, she showed the world the real struggles of veterans, honoring voices often ignored: love, marriage, and longing. Jane's personal life mirrored her public struggles. She married 3 times, each relationship revealing new layers of hope and hurt. Her first marriage, to French director Roger Vadim, began when she was 27. Vadim introduced her to a new kind of fame, one focused on her beauty and sexuality. They had a daughter, Vanessa, but Jane felt torn between being a star and a mother. She was present in pictures, but often absent in life. Vadim pushed her into roles that showcased her body, while Jane craved deeper meaning and control over her career. Their differences grew, and Jane finally left him in 1973, choosing pain over pretending. Her second marriage was to Tom Hayden, a political activist. At 35, Jane found something different, a partner who shared her passion for change. But even then, she struggled to balance being a revolutionary and a mother to their son, Troy. Tom wanted Jane to support his causes while keeping a perfect home. Jane tried to be both, but felt like she was failing at everything. Their marriage ended in 1990.
The second time that I had been through a painful parting, at the end of my second marriage, not because it was a better marriage, but I had a nervous breakdown, and I experienced
what did that look like
really,
for you?
It's what it felt like.
Jane loved her children fiercely, but often doubted if she was enough for them. She continued to fight for causes bigger than herself, but the cost was a quiet loneliness that never fully left her. Even though Jane Fonda had inspired millions with her strength and courage, inside she was still mourning parts of herself she never fully understood. She often showed grace to others, but struggled to give that same kindness to herself. Her marriage to Tom Hayden was not a failure because of a lack of love or passion. Instead, it was a deep struggle between the powerful public woman she was and the private sacrifices she had to make. After that marriage ended, Jane faced the hardest challenge of all: learning to forgive herself. By the time she married for the 3rd time, in 1991, she was no longer the insecure young woman who had been haunted by her family's legacy or the fierce activist always fighting against the system. At 53 years old, Jane was wiser, weathered by life's storms and tired of always having to rebuild from scratch. Her third husband, Ted Turner, was a media titan, the force behind CNN, a man with planes, ranches, and business empires. He seemed to offer Jane something she had spent her whole life chasing: security, success, and a break from chaos. At first, life with Ted sparkled with promise. They lived between large estates, smiled for the cameras at fancy events, and played the part of a perfect power couple with style and polish. But beneath the surface, something familiar crept in. It was a silence Jane had heard before, not the silence of neglect, but of invisibility. With Roger, her first husband, she had been an amusement with Tom, a comrade in activism. But with Ted, she was expected to fit into a frame, to be a partner who supported without challenging. Her opinions were heard, but rarely invited or embraced. Jane's identity, once fierce and rooted in protest and purpose, slowly began to fade under the weight of appearances. Publicly, she stood proudly beside a titan. Privately, she felt herself slipping away. As her children grew independent and her world slowed down, Jane started to drift. Not because others silenced her, but because she chose roles that dimmed her own voice. She became the poised, elegant, devoted woman the world applauded. But behind closed doors, she was unraveling. She missed the messy, passionate, loud woman she used to be, the one who spoke truth with fire and conviction. In Jane's own words, the marriage was filled with gentle love, but lacked heat. It wasn't cruelty that ended it. It was the slow disappearance of herself. Jane painfully realized that comfort could also be a cage. When the marriage ended in 2001, there were no headlines, no court battles, just a woman walking away from luxury to reclaim her freedom. Jane left with wealth, yes, but more importantly, with sovereignty. For the first time in decades, she didn't belong to a man, a movement, or a mold. She belonged to herself, and maybe, after all her searching, that was the most radical love story of all. Motherhood, too, remained a complicated journey. Through all the reinventions and relationships, Jane's role as a mother was filled with love, guilt, and the quiet hope for redemption. She adored her daughter Vanessa, calling her brave, and remembering the first moment she held her as almost a spiritual experience. But raising a child under the spotlight's gaze filled Jane with deep remorse. She worried she might pass on the perfectionism and pressure that haunted her own childhood. So, she vowed to protect Vanessa from those same burdens, even as she stumbled through motherhood herself. With her son Troy, Jane saw both strength and sadness. She admired his steady creativity, but carried guilt for the times she was absent. Missed dinners, broken promises, and the passion projects that took her away. Jane once said she had to learn to apologize with her whole heart, not just for mistakes, but for the choices she made. Over time, through honesty and shared pain, the wounds began to heal. Trust didn't come from grand gestures, but from small conversations, tears, and the quiet courage to forgive. Jane didn't walk away from motherhood empty. She walked away changed. Her foundation for teenagers in Georgia was more than charity. It was personal. Jane created it because she knew what it felt like to be lost, and because her children had taught her humility. Vanessa and Troy gave her more than titles or status. They gave her grace to be imperfect and strength to keep trying. Jane's story is not one of flawless motherhood or romantic triumph, but of persistence, of learning to love and be loved imperfectly. She learned that every goodbye meant leaving parts of herself behind, but also making room to grow. The woman Jane became was wiser, more whole, quietly powerful, not despite her wounds, but because of them. Illness, aging, and the quiet strength. Even after surviving the storms of marriage, motherhood, and fame, Jane Fonda's most personal war came from within her own body. The years brought a series of harsh health challenges: In 2010, at age 72, she was diagnosed with breast cancer.
At 72 years old, Jane Fonda is the latest celebrity to be diagnosed with cancer. The famous actress revealed Thursday she recently had a scare with breast cancer, but luckily she caught it early.
Jane Fonda may have announced that she had cancer, but it's not as grim as we thought.
A lump was removed in surgery that saved her life, but the fear didn't vanish with the stitches. Then, in 2019, a small lesion on her lip turned out to be skin cancer. The treatment was minor, but the warning was clear. Time was no longer endless. And in 2022 came the heaviest blow of all, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. At 84, when many people quietly surrender to old age, Jane entered chemotherapy. She did it publicly and courageously, knowing her voice could give strength to others facing illness. But beneath that strength was a quiet truth, the kind of pain that doesn't need an audience. No red carpets, no applause, just cold hospital rooms, IV lines, the hum of machines, and the deep loneliness illness often brings.
To our GMA cover story, overnight Oscar-winning actress Jane Fonda revealing her non-Hodgkin's lymphoma diagnosis on Instagram, sharing that she's in good spirits as she begins chemotherapy, saying, quote, "This is a very treatable cancer. 80% of people survive."
At night, when the world was still, Jane was simply a woman alone, remembering the fierce, radiant force she used to be. She later said, cancer slowed her down and forced her to look inward. "I'm not afraid of dying," she shared, "but I am afraid of reaching the end with regrets." And there were regrets. Missed birthdays, rushed goodbyes, phone calls never made because work or causes always came first. That guilt doesn't disappear. It softens and becomes part of one's shadow. Even after remission, Jane faced the betrayal of time. Her mirror didn't lie. Her knees ached, her spine curved, and her once sharp memory faltered. For a woman who once redefined strength, accepting frailty was the hardest role of all. The cruelest part was solitude. After 3 marriages ended and with no romantic partner beside her, Jane faced her hardest battle mostly alone. Not without love, but without constant presence. She had wealth and legacy, but in the stillness of night, none of it held her hand. Her fight didn't need cameras or speeches. It needed breath and quiet resolve. When Jane walked out of treatment, thinner, quieter, but smiling, she reminded the world, beauty is not in youth or perfection. It's in persistence, in rising each day with grace, even when your body says no. Jane Fonda built an empire of art, activism, and acclaim. But in her private war with illness, we see the raw truth of her legacy. Not just what she achieved, but how fiercely she endured. At 87, Jane lives away from the spotlight, in peace. Her Los Angeles home is no longer full of cameras or gala lights. It's a quiet sanctuary filled with nature, books, and memories of a life fully lived. After decades of red carpets and revolution, she chooses stillness, reflection, and meaningful connections. Her legacy is no longer measured by awards or headlines, but by the hearts she has touched, the causes she has lifted, and the healing she has built with her children, Vanessa and Troy. The bond is softer, more honest. Jane has long accepted her absence during their younger years, but she doesn't let regret write her story. Instead, she chooses presence. Now they gather for quiet dinners, exchange letters and laughter, and allow space for vulnerability, a luxury fame once denied them. Romance, once a battlefield of expectation and compromise, no longer holds power over her. Since ending her relationship with Richard Perry in 2017, Jane embraces solitude not as emptiness, but as freedom. "I don't have time for it," she says, not bitterly, but peacefully. For the first time, she belongs entirely to herself. Perhaps the most profound closure came not from love or motherhood, but from her father. Henry Fonda remained a distant, unknowable figure for most of her life, a man worshipped by millions, but emotionally unreachable at home. Jane chased his approval for decades, but met only cold silence. Then, in 1981, on the set of On Golden Pond, art offered a kind of mercy. In a scene mirroring their fractured relationship, Jane's character reached out to her father. In that unscripted moment, Henry wept, not as an actor, but as a father finally seen. 5 months later, he was gone.
My family was falling apart. My mother at that time was in and out of mental institutions. And my father was seeing another woman, just a little bit older than me, 7 years older than me.
But not before Jane whispered words her childhood self had longed to say. I love you. I forgive you. I hope you forgive me. That moment, raw, redemptive, and heartbreakingly late, became her quiet triumph. Not captured by flashbulbs or gold statues, but carried within. A daughter finally seen, a woman finally whole. Jane Fonda's financial legacy is extraordinary, not just in size, but in meaning. With a net worth over $200 million, she stands among Hollywood's wealthiest women. But it's not inheritance or luck. It's decades of smart choices, best-selling fitness ventures, royalties, and investments. Her divorce from Ted Turner brought a reported $70 million settlement, but her fortune is truly her own. From a New Mexico ranch sold for nearly $20 million to a Beverly Hills estate listed at $13 million, each home was a symbol: sanctuary, ambition, reflection. Even her quirky car collection tells a story of identity, not indulgence. But above all, Jane's wealth is measured by what she has given away. Through her foundation and activism, she has poured millions into causes she believes in: women's rights, climate action, youth support. Even in her 80s, Jane works with the fire of a woman who never stopped believing change is possible. Her resilience comes from a lifetime of discipline: light exercise, a Mediterranean diet, hydration, meditation, and journaling. Even during chemo, she stayed active when she could. Jane Fonda doesn't fight aging. She embraces it. Her silver hair, upright posture, and calm gaze show respect for time, not resistance. She talks about death with clarity, not fear. What scares her is leaving life with regrets. That belief guides every day she lives now, fully, intentionally, and honestly. Her impact goes far beyond movies or activism. She is admired for courage and raw humanity. Jane's true wealth lies in survival, purpose, and transformation. She leaves behind more than money. She leaves a story forged in trauma and rebuilt in truth, a story that lives on in Hollywood history and in the hearts of anyone who has ever fallen and chosen to rise again. As we reach the end of this part of Jane Fonda's incredible journey, it's clear that her life is a testament to the complexity of being human: flawed, resilient, vulnerable, and endlessly evolving. Jane's story is far more than the glitz and glamour of Hollywood or the boldness of her activism. It's a deep and honest exploration of what it means to search for identity, to struggle with expectations, and ultimately, to find peace within oneself. From her early years filled with uncertainty and a longing for approval, through marriages that shaped and challenged her, to the quiet battles with illness and aging, Jane has navigated some of life's toughest terrains. What stands out most is not just what she has achieved publicly, but how she has grown privately. The woman who once struggled to belong has, in time, carved out a space where she belongs most profoundly, with herself. Her journey through love and loss reminds us that relationships don't always fit the fairy tale mold. Whether it was with Tom Hayden, Ted Turner, or others, Jane's marriages were not about perfect passion, but about learning the delicate balance between personal ambition and companionship. These experiences taught her that comfort can sometimes feel like a cage, and that true freedom often comes from stepping away to rediscover your own voice. As a mother, Jane's story is one of complexity and redemption. Like many, she wrestled with guilt and the desire to protect her children from the pressures she faced. Yet, through honesty and vulnerability, she rebuilt connections, showing that love doesn't have to be flawless to be deeply meaningful. Her foundation for at-risk youth reflects a mother's heart expanded to the world, turning personal pain into purpose. Perhaps the most profound chapter of her life is her confrontation with illness and aging. Facing breast cancer, skin cancer, and lymphoma in her 70s and 80s, Jane displayed not just physical strength, but emotional courage. She refused to let fear define her, embracing each day with grace and honesty. Her perspective on aging, seeing it as a process to be honored rather than fought, offers a powerful lesson in acceptance and resilience. Today, Jane Fonda lives quietly, away from the relentless spotlight. Her focus has shifted to meaningful connections, personal reflection, and continuing to fight for the causes she believes in. Her story isn't about fame or fortune, but about the enduring power of persistence, vulnerability, and self-love. Through every challenge and triumph, she has taught us that the greatest legacy we can leave is one of authenticity and courage. So, as you reflect on Jane Fonda's journey, consider this. How do you face your own challenges? What parts of your story are you still learning to embrace? Her life reminds us all that it's okay to be a work in progress, to stumble, to heal, and to rise again. If Jane's story resonated with you, please share your thoughts below. What lessons or moments stood out most? And if you want to hear more stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay connected. Because behind every public figure is a human story full of depth and inspiration, just waiting to be told. Thank you for joining me on this journey through Jane Fonda's life. Until next time, keep embracing your own story, and remember that every step forward is a step toward becoming your truest self.